My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice is cold. I'm only here to even a score. Whoa. My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice is cold. We down right now, but did it before. Whoa. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Night at One's podcast episode number 76. As a reminder, we are the only podcast that features a former UCF national champion, a former UCF radio host, an ESPN analyst and hoops player, an infamous rapper, our resident influencer and IG star shooting the breeze, talking UCF sports. Remember to like and follow us on YouTube, IG, X, all the fun social medias, and check out the 70 plus teams and conferences on the College Huddle, of which we are a member. Now that we got that out of the way, I do have some good news and some bad news. The good news is we're going to have some more team members on a little bit later in the show. The bad news is lots of people are sick. So it'll be about 25 minutes or so before we have Josh and Alan to the show, which means I'm producing and I'm talking for a little bit. The good news is as always, the comments are open and you can ask and interact and ask us anything. So this week, what are we going to cover? Well, there's lots and lots to talk about. One, we got some dubs this weekend. So baseball got a dub and didn't get the sweep, but won the series. Softball had a big win. And Johnny Dawkins retired, yet another coach, continuing the wonderful tradition of UCF coaches ushering the opposing coaches to their exit. In addition to that, we'll talk a little bit about Terry's faux pas from last week. We'll talk to Coach Coop and talk about Coach Coop and Coach Harris and their interviews this week. That actually is pretty interesting, gave us some good insights. We'll talk a little bit about Johnny's future, give out some listener love, and we'll have something new that we're going to be introducing, which is the pivot poll for this week. But we're going to be introducing a poll for you guys to interact with us on our social media accounts. But we want to get the poll and the pulse of Night Nation in the show. This week, it'll be about the pivot. We'll talk a little baseball. We'll have Alan's Oxymoronic stat of the week, Josh's sometimes funny fact of the week, and a quick update on other UCF sports that Alan does not watch. So for now, let's go ahead and get started and talk a little bit about Coach Coop and Coach Harris's interview. So it was really, really interesting. Remember, we've talked quite a bit about how coaches that don't have a relationship with Scottfrost came together for this particular group. So we've got a few core key players that came back, but Coach Coop and Coach Harris didn't have really a direct relationship. Coach Harris more so. Coach Coop did his interview first, talked a lot about the offense and how we were going to be an attacking offense this year, which is news to Night Nation's ears as it pertains to Scottfrost. And, you know, for us, when we're talking about UCF Fast, I have that t-shirt. I think a lot of you do as well. That's what we're looking for again. And so Coach Coop's history, he met Scottfrost when he was at Portland State, and Scottfrost was at Oregon. It was kind of like a mentor type of relationship where he was learning from Coach Frost. And so he would actually come up there every year and talk football while he was at Oregon. And that turned into a weekly type of conversation that they had in that mentorship type role. When Scottfrost went to Nebraska, he did have a relationship with him there, brought him on staff, and he actually was the interim offensive coordinator in 2021. He then moved on And he's got quite a lot of history with a bunch of different coaches that you would know: Josh Heupel, Scottfrost, and a few others that he's going to draw from to bring to the staff. So let me pause there for a second, because Josh Lazar is last but not least traditionally, but this week he's first. So Josh Lazar,
hey,
welcome to the stage, my friend.
Hello world, it's me. And yeah, listen, I I didn't even do my hair. You're like, oh, we're starting at 9. We're starting at 9. And I was like, oh, well, I was trying to roll out this contract that I'm trying to get signed. Well, every cross you want to do for sign, because it's a big one.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I can get on. And then I come up to learn more about Coach Coop and some of that conversation interview. So that's it's a great start, everyone.
Yeah.
It's a great start to the week.
So the good news is Coach Coop talked a lot about not only just his relationship and his history with Coach Scottfrost, but more so about offenses, right? So Coach Coop, like I was just mentioning to everyone, he has a lot of experience with different offenses that he's run, right? And under, some names that you would know, Josh Heupel being one of them. And his is what he talked a lot about in his interview was making sure that he highlighted that they were busy trying to build a staff, busy trying to recruit, but now they're really making connections. He talked about he's got the offense's name down, right, as offensive coordinator, but now he's working on connecting with and learning the names of the other team members, right? Go ahead, Josh.
What I was going to say, it's like going into another organization that you haven't been a part of, and you've seen them from afar. You might know one or two people, but everyone else is new. They have to get the student athletes right. They have to figure out how they work and fit, and I feel like that was part of that interview too. They have to figure out their coworkers as well, and it's not like what we saw in 2017 is going to be the carbon copy of what we're seeing in 2025. We already have heard that multiple times. So it just takes a little bit of time to get used to being in a new place, even though you have the general, like, what you're doing. You've been there before, you know your role, right? And you have to adapt that, and you have to change it around for the new circumstances you're in. So yeah, it's tough. From when Coach Ross was saying he was just pretty much living in, he's kind of like Shaquem Griffin, like living in the facilities for like 6-8 weeks, because you have to do everything all at once. I'm sure Coach Coop is getting used to and relatively good with all of that. And we have a nice summer break coming up soon to hopefully get moving forward with everything that we hope to see, like you're talking about earlier, the UCF Fast and Fierce in whatever version we see it today.
Yeah, and Coach Coop talked about that a little bit, right? He talked about taking fundamentals. One of the biggest things and priorities for any new offense is giving folks the ability to make decisions and making it simple for them, right? And so Coach Coop talked about really hammering home the fact that there are some basic principles for this offense that they're going to have to really get to know. And that's what they're focusing on for the spring. And, with him being an offensive coordinator as well in the past, right? So he was an offensive coordinator, not just at Nebraska. He and taking elements, the reason him and Scottfrost first got together was they had elements of the offense that was similar to each other. So they wanted to learn from each other. So his comment on that was basically, they're going to take elements. It's going to be a collaborative type offense. Head coach Scottfrost will call the plays, but he's going to be there to help prep, set up new schemes and wrinkles in schemes. He said in the past, and this really gives you a viewing point to the coaching side of Scottfrost. With Scottfrost, he tends to, when you're doing game prep, you can bring concepts into the room as you're doing prep for the upcoming week that he will fold into and incorporate into that. So he knows Scottfrost, has been around Scottfrost both as a mentee And as a coworker for a very long time, he knows the offense really, really well, and he has his own wrinkles that he can bring in from Josh Heupel. So when I hear about those core, things that they're going to have to know, it reminds me a lot of Josh Heupel, because Josh Heupel, there were every single position on offense had those core things that they were responsible for, but then a receiver could make a decision on where he was going to go in the route tree, etc. Coach Coop is also heavily involved in QB coaching, so that'll help KZ. So you'll have him working with KZ on that, and he will also be the tight ends coach, which he mentioned a time in 2010 where he came into a role. He was the tight ends coach, and he is looking for multi-sport athletes that he can turn into tight ends. He used an example of a guy named Washington who was a tight end, or was a basketball player, played basketball at the collegiate level, converted him, and a year later he got drafted into the NFL and had several successful contracts since then as a tight end. So he's going to use that as he's talking to recruits. And what's interesting too, on the recruiting vein, he talked a lot about, and so did Brandon Harris, which we haven't talked about yet, but will on his interview. They talked a lot about finding guys that have the right skills and proving to those guys that they can develop them. So, they'll still get the best player available, but to me, that speaks to, hey, whereas before we were diamond mining with those low to mid 3 stars in Frost's offense before, we're going to be our version of diamond mining here is going to be the higher end 3 stars, but we'll still get those 4 stars and 4-star blue chips where we can. So it was really, really interesting to hear the philosophy. Coach Frost, Coach Harris, Coach Coop all talked about making sure that we're getting the right guys that are bought into UCF, right? And with what we heard from Gus was, I'm just going to get the highest talent that I possibly can. And I think that really bled itself into the culture. And we talked a lot about that with Trey Neal. But it was interesting to hear Coach Coop's take from the offense, where it's going to be a multiple offense. So it's not going to be go fast all the time like we had before. You heard that from Scottfrost as well as a warning. Don't expect UCF fast. But if they're going with those core elements, that'll help them install the offense faster, and it means that they will have the ability to go fast when they need to, because they've got those core competencies in place. And we saw that with Scott Frost, and we saw that with Josh Heupel to a different extent and a different way of employing that. Josh?
Yeah. I'm excited. Anytime you have a new system, a new boss, a new environment, to me, it's exciting. When I moved in different roles, I always had that first, forget the first 100 days or whatever, but that first year or two, like, I'm excited, we're doing good things. That's a lot of the work I do personally. And I'm excited to see where this all fits. And there's a couple of things I really like. I like that the fan base seemingly will see what happens by December, but the fan base is seemingly okay with, we all see this as a potential rebuild. We're not expecting miracles. I feel like the fan base, if they are to be relatively reasonable, will be in a way where if we see improvement, if there is fight in the team, and we'll kind of get to that in basketball later today, if there is more than what we saw limping across the not even the finish line 4-8 last year, I feel like the fan base is going to be okay with that. And not overly, we're going to be 15-16 and over year.
No, but I do think the big key and what was missing with Gus was progress, right? So we had progress, that we plateaued, and then we regressed, right? So
yeah,
I think Scott Frost and his team gets the benefit of the doubt, especially since they're installing an all new offense, they're bringing all their players. I mean, he came in late in the cycle, so we didn't get everybody that we wanted. I expect some more transfer activity in the second NIL window that we have. And I don't know if that'll be people moving out or not, because one of the things Scottfrost said, and something Gus didn't do, was he said he'll play the best player at the position, right? So you'll see guys get those opportunities as well, which we really didn't see before. So I don't know, about that. I do know that they will get the benefit of the doubt, but I think what UCF and Knight Nation will be looking for, and look no further than 2016, is glimpses and progress. And I think that's really what they're looking for there.
Yeah. And so the other part of this, so yes, and I'm excited to even, and it's sad that I'm saying this, that we have someone who wants UCF to succeed and kind of understands us a little bit. And this isn't just like to Gus, nor to Heupel either. There is something missing in most college sports. In basketball, in football, in the revenue generating sports. At one point, it used to be you're playing for, the jersey. And understandably, there are a lot of people who should have been earning money for playing for that jersey over the table, not under the table. So let's just put that to the side for a little bit. I think a lot of people in college sports are not too thrilled with the monetization and the way that it's seemingly affecting athletes. They're students, yes, but athletes. And there doesn't seem to be that pride or joy for your alma mater. And most of the people who are UCF fans, let me get to the point. Most of the people who are UCF fans went to UCF and graduated from UCF. So I feel like the concepts of trying to build up freshmen, trying to get this camaraderie and get bought into a system of play will hopefully permeate that we don't have a bunch of one and done athletes, that they might invest in the area, they might invest in their degree. We'll see how that goes. But there is a business reason for that too, because we would, I want Shaquille Griffin to be around the Central Florida area promoting all the things he does and doing all the great work he does versus Seattle or somewhere else. So I feel like I like this part of what I'm hearing so far too, as well as the excitement of seeing something that's committed to playing the best players, period.
Yeah, I think the big difference, Scott 1 versus Scott 2, right? And Heupel or everything else. Scottfrost wanted us to do well, when he took over as head coach the first time around. Difference was, as much as he says, hey, it was a mistake to go to Nebraska, let's be real. When you're on the ascension like that and you're a young head coach and you haven't done it before and you haven't earned the $20 million that you're going to earn from Nebraska yet, right? It's a lot easier to say that once you've already made that generational money. At that time, he was still playing for a bigger job. And UCF was in the AAC at the time. We weren't in the Power Four. There were all those things that were going on as well. So, but I think Scottfrost 2, the version that we get now, I think he appreciates it. So it makes it easier. If he really did feel the way that he says he felt about things in the first go round and really regretted leaving, which he's been pretty adamant about, then that means, that this time around, he's got reasons to say. Looks like Alan Levin just joined us. I'm going to go ahead and add Alan to the stage. Woohoo. Alan, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey man, sorry. We started a little earlier this week. But what we're talking about now is Coach Coop and Coach Harris. Coach Harris on the defensive side of the ball also had an interview this week. For those of you that don't know Coach Harris, which is Coach Brandon Harris, he comes to UCF. He was a second-round NFL draft pick, if you guys remember him. He was a South Florida guy, brother of Tim Harris, which is kind of odd, like that connection there. He comes to us from the FAU Owls, and one of the things that he talked about a lot and that he really promoted when he was at FAU is aggressive defenses. And so that's also something that Scottfrost wanted. And so in his first season in 2022, FAU was tied for 12th nationally in defensive TDs, and he picked off 12 passes. This is something that we've been missing from our DBs, is not just playing the ball, but actually playing the man, but playing the ball. And I think this is part of that process where people are going to be aggressive. The other thing is he brings some cachet, not only here to the kids that he's coaching here, but also the kids in South Florida. Everybody knows who he is. He talked a lot about, how recruiting starts before you actually start recruiting, meaning when you're down there with your kids in South Florida, when people know your name, his dad is a super high-level high school coach with a big name down in South Florida. They watched you grow up. They watched the NFL portion of it, of your career. You're going to get some cachet for that. And, what he talked about too, what he talked about as well was he talked a lot about, coming in. He didn't have a prior relationship with Coach Frost, coming in as a, defensive backs kind of guy, really understanding that position, but then growing into the co-defensive coordinator role and eventually his role here at UCF. He seems like he's super excited to be here. It's a continuation of the Harris name, which is good for us in South Florida. He likes to be aggressive on defense with the DBs, which is something that we've been really missing because we've had a good defensive line for the most part. And that's the part that we've kind of been missing. And so I'm excited to see what he can do there. What do you guys think of Coach Harris? Were you able to watch the interview? What were your thoughts?
I would say I didn't get a chance to watch that interview. I will say that anyone that has ties to youth sports in the Miami-Dade area or, muck on down, is always good. It's flat out always good. If you get a Belgrade down, you're going to find a lot of people with a lot of talent who are typically really fast. And it's just, it's how Miami built in the 80s. It's how the rest of the country tries to take all of these amazing athletes from Florida. And eventually they come back down here, usually on transfers or, do really, really well elsewhere. So I love the fact that we have a bit of this interesting family history within the coaching staff. I love that we have people who are in tune to youth sports and, like you said, kind of knowing these. It's not like someone they haven't seen before or talked before. I love that about it. And the ball.
To your point, Josh, add on to that, he talked about that in his interview and how a lot of these kids, because of his ties with his dad in high school after his NFL career and how he got back into coaching because he really wasn't going to be a coach, right? He knows a lot of these kids, including some of these kids that are now on UCF's roster, because he saw them play at the smaller leagues, saw them play in high school. So they know who he is since he's a kid, right? Even beyond his recruiting efforts at FAU, he knows them since they were little and they remember him now. So the relationships and the name runs deep in South Florida.
Absolutely. And on top of all of that, let's not forget what's going on within the defense we had in 2016, 2017, right? I mean, part of our intro is Trey pulling a ball from the end zone, right? Yep. So I would say ball hawkishness, if I want to invent a term, but I'm not ball hawk, obviously, but that type of mentality, maybe it was there the last 3 or 4 years. I don't think we saw a lot of it. And my hope is that, to me, it all makes sense. When you do amazing on defense, it does two things. Other than you usually win a lot of games, but really two is the goal of most of these kids at this point are to get more money while in college or get to the NFL. And you don't do that playing soft coverages that we've been seeing the last couple of years, playing 5-10 yards off the ball and giving up 4 or 6. There just doesn't seem to be that level of attacking that we have expected over time, like from O'Leary through even to God, I can't pull his name out of my head. What? Chins. I was thinking Lance. I'm like, that's a little old. Chins. Like we until we got to the Shannon Heupel mashup that Heupel didn't agree to. We had that. So I'm waiting. I'm hoping he's a piece of that puzzle that'll get us back to those type of ways on defense.
All right. So that was Coach Coop. I mean, the biggest takeaways for me is he's going to be aggressive. He's going to teach ball hawks. He's going to be very involved with the DBs, which is an area that we need, to your point, Josh, we need a lot of help in. And he's got South Florida ties. So, from a recruiting standpoint, that was somewhat of a continuation there. Now, I'd like to pivot.
Are we doing it?
Yes, we are. Till the poll says we aren't.
Okay, pivot.
All right. Pivot and talk a little bit about the question I wanted to start with, which is a big question. Does UCF understand the fan base? So obviously when you transition from someone like, Danny White, who was very in tune with the fan base, and it wasn't just Danny White, it was his team because they were involved. They were communicating with the fan base. They would ask questions of the fan base and incorporate that. I don't know if you guys remember, there was a big hullabaloo about the painting the inside of the practice facility white. And then all of a sudden that happened. So they were very active, very vocal, right? So he leaves, in comes Terry Mohajir. Now, Terry Mohajir from the start had some faux pas. He didn't understand the two, the 1-for-1 basically games, and we got signed up for the 2-and-1 game with Florida. Although he says that's not what it was. It was a 2-and-2-and-1. But whatever.
It's a 1-and-1-and-1.
Yeah, exactly. So he's just
I forgot that.
Yeah, so he started there, and there's some other faux pas that he's made along the way, right? But generally out of touch with who we were as a fan base and what got us engaged. Well, more recently, as most of you probably already know and have read about because it was all over the news and everywhere else, there was TicketGate, right? Yeah, exactly. And TicketGate was all about, UCF had a thought in their mind that they are trying to stop ticket scalping, right? That's basically what they're wanting. They're wanting more seats of our fans in the seats. It's more of a basketball problem than it is a football problem. I mean, Josh, we talked about you selling your tickets last year at basketball games. But at the end of the day, they cast a pretty wide net and they got a lot of long-time season ticket holders entwined in the net. And then once that happened, Terry comes back out 24 hours later, puts out a message to the fan base and said, "Hey, I'm sorry you feel the way you do. That was not our intention." Right? So, instead of, he did say, "I'm sorry," but the way that it's almost like saying, "I'm sorry you feel that way," right? You're never taking ownership of the problem.
Yeah. That my wife would not have accepted that as "I'm sorry." That's my qualification there.
So all this has happened. Terry tried to do a little damage control. The messaging from UCF was not the greatest. We had a ticket rep person out there reaching out to individual ticket holders, and his messaging was not great. It was generally a cluster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With UCF, we have core people that have built this program from the ground up. Right. Yeah. We're part of that, right? We're season ticket holders and blah, 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 and all of that. We've been around for a while, as evidenced by my gray hair. Josh had a birthday, but he still looks younger than I do. And, but we've been around the block for a while. Me since 1999. That's when, that's when I started with UCF. Those are not the people you want to alienate, right? Those are also the people that got us to the point where 2017, 2018 added more fans. So now you've got those people being alienated as well. So the core question comes, does under this administration, because there was a lot of change for the administration that left, and I want to ask this question to both of you, does UCF understand its fan base? And then I'll give my thoughts on that as well.
Well, I'll get started because I know that Alan might be furiously typing away. So I have
I don't hear
another.
his keyboard like I normally
Yeah,
do,
well,
so
I
I'm
think
not
well,
sure
no, he
about
hasn't muted. That's great.
that.
So here's two things. First, the first is a question, and this is just rhetorical. Does UCF care about the non-shareholder level fan base anymore, or like they used to? Might be even better. Don't have to answer that, but that is a question we have to answer because there are two people who I am 99.9% certain care about and know more about this fan base than anyone else. It's Eric and Jimmy, and you don't need to use their last names because they've been here about as long as both of we have.
DeSalvo and Skiles.
Correct. I mean, I was with Jimmy on a bus trip to Penn State in 2004, where it was us four, a couple of other Adrian and two other rowdy knights or something, and a bunch of other frat and sorority people, which was
Sounds like a good party.
this is now 21 years ago. That trip can now drink. Those people know the fan base. They are the fan base. They grew up at UCF. And the question still remains, does UCF care about that more so than what else they are looking at? So to me, I feel like the answer is yes for now. I think we are in big boy athletics, big person, whatever you want to call it. We are in the big time. And at some point, unfortunately, caring about season ticket holders that are not donating thousands and thousands of dollars a year might be.
Well, hold on there, Josh. Season ticket holders
I'm not saying it's
are.
happening now. I'm not saying it's right, but
No. But hold on, Josh.
you either have dysfunction in your department, which could be part of it, or there is a desire not to really care about anyone who isn't spending $5,000 a year to pay for access. What do you?
Josh, I think your internet connection's going out. We missed that last "what do you?" But feels like I'm in a Zoom meeting and I need to take a picture. That being said, I would argue to that point. I'm not going to address everything that you said, right?
Yeah.
Because I'll get to that when I respond. But I would argue that those season ticket holders are donating. I know I am. Part of my ticket cost is
I agree.
a donation, right?
I agree.
And I have 3 season tickets that I usually buy, right? And when I buy those 3 season tickets, it's $800 or so per ticket goes to, or a big portion of it goes to that donation. The second thing is UCF has always touted, including Terry Mohajer, that we are a fan base that is growing. We don't have, a ton of huge donors. Our donor base has gone up significantly. Terry has done a good job of expanding the shareholder society and I forget what's above that, whatever that is, right? And we've got some pretty big donations, the biggest donations we've ever had recently, right?
Yeah.
There are a few large donors that there's 3 of them that I can think of that are not UCF alum and were, kind of co-opted into donating for UCF. But everybody else, when you see those shareholder society announcements, who are those people? Those are the same people that you're targeting with this ticket campaign, because whether they can or will do it at that moment in time, right? Our strength is we have a ton of people, myself included, in our age range and demographic that are now upwardly mobile as far as income is concerned. And those are the people that are going to become your shareholders. Those people in the cabana, those people in the lower cabana, those people in the lower tower, the tower club, right? Those are the folks that are going to be the ones that become your donors, especially as they get, as they age, right? And, kids, I've got an 18-year-old kid. My son graduates high school this year. He's going to go to UCF, right? But as soon as that goes away, his college is paid for, which is great. And my daughter's 13. She'll be 18 in 5 years, right? less than 5 years, 4.5 years. I'm the one they're targeting with the ticket thing. It's a faux pas. And I think fundamentally what Danny White was able to tap into as a one of us kind of thing, if they are pursuing that, hey, I'm going to focus all my energy on those higher value things, there is a significant trade-off. One of the things I think UCF hasn't done a good enough job in is giving opportunities. And we saw it with NIL a little bit when they had the lower donation amounts that they allowed people to get. We're not cultivating that middle. And those season ticket holders are the ones that are going to move up pretty soon into those higher donation folks. Carlos McCants, he's hit me up twice, right? Like, hey, let's move you into shareholder access, right? I couldn't do it at the time because I was literally starting several new businesses a couple of years ago, right? And those of you that know me, there's 8 now, right? But now I'm in a position where I'm stable enough that I could do that. But why would I do that if you're not engaging me? You're not giving me opportunities to connect with the players anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all behind a paywall. Let's call it what it is. It's a paywall, right? You're losing that connection between the players and the fans and those that are going to be future donors. And as many people as were graduating and that have seen success at UCF, those people that were students in 2017, 2018, they may have gotten their season tickets now, right? And they have kids that are going to, Ben, for example, tonight, he's a season ticket holder. Tonight, he had three different practices or whatever, which is why he's not on the show, right? Those are the exact same people that you're alienating by doing this. And I just don't see any effort outside of Eric DeSalvo, right, and his communications team. I don't see any effort where there's that direct connection. And the admin is actually pushing the opposite. Exclusivity is great. Creating levels is great. That's how you monetize, right, in business, right? Whether you've got a SaaS model like type of online service or not, yes, 100% do that. But do not lose your identity with the fan base. And I do think when you're talking about the administration portion of it, this is a huge, huge, huge miss for the management of that organization. So do we all screw up? Yes. Do we all learn? Yes. But when it becomes a consistent pattern, people start asking questions, and especially if you're questioning their loyalty. All right, I'm going to get off my soapbox there.
Let me yes and for 1 second and get Alan into this. So this is something I've been talking about and I've heard. What plan? It does seem when you have this much of a faux pas of something that, like, if that passed Jimmy or Eric's eyeballs, they would have immediately shot down. I know Eric's content. Jimmy might be in the room where it happens on some of these things, but I guarantee you that didn't get by his eyes, because he would have known what the heartbeat of the fan base would have said and might have had some feedback, or he was overruled.
They just hired a new communications director, like not even a month and a half ago from the outside.
All I'm saying is that when you ask the question, does UCF understand us? I think you see the answer. It's some, but not all. And if that is the case, just let us know what the plan is. Like, give us an idea. It doesn't have to be just shareholders. You could tell the shareholders deeper and give us some idea. If you believe we're valued, what's the plan? If I were to do something like that in my business, that mea culpa would have been a lot different. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, 100%. Alan, what do you think?
So, I mean, I didn't get that email that some people in the fan base got, but I actually put this on my page and my stories. Like, if I would have received that email, I would have been really pissed. I just don't think UCF, and this was put out in the dungeon. Like, I don't think UCF has exactly like a super long waiting list for season tickets. Our fan base has gotten significantly better since all three of us were in school, but in general, we do not have the cachet nationally or with our own fan base, for that matter, to alienate really anyone, in my opinion. And yeah, they really messed up. And then had the gall at the end of the email to say like, yeah, but also donate here. Like if you're going to sit there and take away privileges because you think, you use some algorithm to indicate if someone is, consistently reselling their tickets or whatnot, and then ask for that. I just think, Roger, you had said that the apology wasn't great. I read that he did say that we missed the mark. So I think there was some accountability. Maybe the email could have been better worded, but he did say we missed the mark. And I think that is actually the best way to describe it. Maybe what they were doing came from a place of, hey, we want to make sure that the bounce house is filled with UCF fans and not, away people, or road fans. But they missed the mark. Like there was how they handled this was just awful. And there's no reason to alienate any long time or short time season ticket holders, or just, people that, if you're a UCF season ticket holder, you're a loyal fan, and they should not be getting called out. And I just think missing the mark is exactly what happened in this situation. And I think it was a pretty egregious mistake, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think, one of the things they always tell you in any kind of PR is control the narrative, right? When you see and you miss the mark, I'm not convinced that Terry ever saw the language that was going out on this. And if he's a true CEO of an admin, right? An admin, you hire people to do that for you, and you trust them to be able to deliver effective communication, right? I think this was a departmental faux pas, but here's the problem. At some point, as a leader, when there's consistent faux pas and you have trouble connecting and there isn't as much access, then you create a vacuum. And when things like this happen and you don't control the narrative, it completely spirals out of control. And then when you do come out and say something, you have to say, like, look, America loves a redemption story. You see it all the time with actors. You see it with sports athletes. Hey, I screwed up. I shouldn't have done X, Y, Z. And once you make that act of contrition, you act for forgiveness and you talk about what you're going to do differently, right? That's like the template. I didn't see that in this instance. And the problem that I see, Terry Mohajir does a decent job and a good job in person. Right? When you talk to him, he's by and large been approachable when I've been around him, etc. But people, you've come off of a losing season, one where you've had to, let's be real, if Gus didn't go the way he did, he would have gone anyway. I mean, It was at a fever pitch after Utah. I was at that game. Yeah. Everybody was calling for his head, right? And so that worked out, navigated that well. It was a parting of the ways, but you don't come back and then, you're already taking away people's seats because of not taking people's seats away, but you're adding seats with the Tower Club that you're trying to sell, right? And you're taking away parking to do that. If you're going to send something out like that, you've got to be darn sure that you're sending it to the right people. Yeah. And then he talked about phone calls, follow-up phone calls. There weren't any follow-up phone calls made. So it's not just about what you say. It's also execution on it and understanding and being able to read the room. And I don't think that Terry necessarily understands, because he is focusing on those high-end donors, which I appreciate. He's done a good job tapping into those, right? And the TDT. Let's throw that out there too. That was a huge, huge win for UCF, right? But I don't think he understands the need for the fan base, because we've been clued in, we've been plugged in. Part of the reason people came to games was because they were connected to the program, connected to the individuals in the program, connected to the football program. George O'Leary understood it. Danny White understood it. Terry Mohajir does not. And if he does understand it, he doesn't know how to tap into it. And I don't think Terry Mohajir understands UCF fans, period. And I know this is a week old because it all dropped, of course, right after we recorded, right? Literally the next day. But at the end of the day, I think that's a big problem for UCF going forward, because again, we're trying to grow the fan base. we're trying to tap into and develop those donors that are going to be in that shareholder society and, et cetera. You have to keep them engaged. You 100% have to keep them engaged, and we have to find new ways to connect with the fan base. I don't have all the answers, except I would suggest that to your point, Josh, you have Jimmy Skiles, right? You have Eric DeSalvo. Lean on them because they understand why we were successful, how we were successful. Eric DeSalvo, every year, on top of social media, he was part of the on top of the social media awards. And the reason for that is he created content that connected with the fan base, right? And so that drove the views for a smaller fan base, that drove the clicks, that drove the engagement. And we're missing that because the leadership doesn't understand it. So for me, if the question is, does UCF understand us? I think at this point with this administration, they have not demonstrated the ability that they do. Thoughts?
I've always felt
disagree.
UCF was, I disagree too. I do. If you're talking about isolating it around Terry Mohajir, I agree with you. And I know he's at the top of the food chain, so everything stems down from him. But, I always felt UCF was a young school that was very in tune, whether it was social media and doing stuff like putting, one of the first things to put like the social media account names on the practice jerseys and stuff like for the football team, and just in general, just with how they engage the fan base. And I still think if we're not the best on social media, we're top 5 in the country. Just like our UCF football, Instagram and Twitter is always so creative and funny. They're really good at trolling. And I know that's mainly Eric and his team, but I got the overall vibe I get from UCF. I always felt they fit that young mold of a young alumni base and young fan base. Overall, I still feel that way. If you wanted to say Terry Mohajir, I agree with you that maybe he doesn't get it. He comes from Kansas. Maybe this is a different culture vibe for him, whatever.
He went to Arkansas State. That's where he was AD before he came to us. I mean, he came in and
sorry, that's what I meant. Arkansas. Yeah, that's where he went to Kansas and Arkansas State, right? Or Kansas is his dream job or something like that. Whatever.
He was a coach. Actually, Andrew Fagley, friend of the show, right?
Yeah.
He was a TA there, and then he was a coach there, etc. He went to Arkansas State as an administrator. And then, I mean, the opening press conference, he compared us to FAU. Or FIU.
I think that's why
which one it was. It's like, how do your level of understanding, you don't compare us to a lower, yes, we were all G5, but they were a lower tier G5.
Mm-hmm.
This is the brand. What have we always said about UCF's brand? Chip on the shoulder, always looking for respect, blah, 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 blah. And that's why we loved Danny White. You saw that with the Tennessee communique when Ohio State dropped. Well, I think it was Ohio State. I can't remember exactly. I think it was Ohio State dropped Tennessee. So there was reporting out on it. Danny White's personal Twitter account, he comes out and he says what? He says, no, we didn't mutually agree to drop the series. They dropped the series, right? So that chip on your shoulder, that leadership style, that is who we are as a fan base. How, Terry Mohajir comes from the football playoff committee. He was a playoff committee member. He doesn't, he had an opportunity. If he wanted to ingratiate himself with the fan base, the first thing he could have said was, hey, I was a member of the committee. Yes, we make misses. UCF should have been in the playoff either, if not 2017, at least 2018, right? If you had said that, you'd have had the fan base hook, line, and sinker in one of us. Yeah. I never see Terry Mohajir say anything like that. Never. And that was the difference between Danny White and Terry Mohajir. To your point, Eric DeSalvo is still amazing at what he does. And that's what I'm saying. He needs to lean on people like that when it's stuff that involves the entire fan base, right? So Jimmy Skiles, I guarantee you, Jimmy Skiles and Eric DeSalvo were not involved in that communication, at least not on the execution of that communication, right? Yes, you take your analytics, but you understand and you read the room. Now's not the time to do that. Number one, coming off the season that we came off of. And because winning cures all. Let's be real about that, right? And number two, understand who you're alienating. And if you do make a mistake, great. Come out, own it. To Josh's point, what's the plan? How do we move forward? This is what we're doing. And then most importantly, execute on it. If you tell your team you're going to do something, whether you're a coach, a business leader, or an AD at a university, and you're telling your fan base you're going to do something, you better darn make sure, or darn, as our friend Mr. Sanders says at Colorado, you better darn make sure that you follow up with it. Otherwise, you lose them. You have an opportunity to make them more loyal, but you lose them when you react the way that you did. So, Mr. Marketing Communications Director over at UCF, if you're in charge of PR, you fumbled the football on your own goal line. You know what I mean? That's what you did with this. And I don't think they understand this from that perspective.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. And Alan's back to typing again. But but no, I think that is pretty clear, and you gotta stop stubbing your toes, man. I know things change when you have new employees and new personnel, but you can't keep doing this without getting some blowback. And I think this is, truth be told, I bet you they didn't realize that this level of blowback was going to happen, to the point where it's like being retweeted and talked about in 600,000 plus follower
or
sports
local
accounts
TV
online.
is doing
Local
is like
TV.
it. Local TV is going. Shareholder Sean, a guy that I know pretty well, right? So Sean, pretty wild dude, but always been big UCF fan.
Yeah,
he gets pinged, and he has something to say. And then you've got
that's ridiculous.
Another UCF personality from another podcast who has a huge following, shares that on Twitter that he got pinged, Mike, right? Yeah. And then guess what? You've got local news reaching out to Mike saying, hey, can we use this tweet on a story about this particular issue?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah. Again, stop stubbing your own toe.
Yeah, 100%. Anything else we want to say about this?
No, we're stubbing our own toe by keeping it up. We've the horse.
Pause. I know. Go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and pivot.
Pivot. Ooh, we got to do something.
All right. Let's talk about UCF hoops and how they retired another coach. So, Josh, you were at the Utah game. Why don't you give us a few of your observations as far as UCF in this game?
Okay, well, let's get past the Oklahoma State game because that was ridiculous. Let's talk about the thing that everyone cares about.
The past 7 games were ridiculous.
Well, they were. So here, okay, we have some stuff in the notes, and I'll get to some of those things. Maybe Roger will do that recap. But here's what it looked like live. And let me preface this. So I'm taking my daughter to the game. Hold on, I got to see my texts if I can pull that up. I'm taking my daughter to the game, and we get there about on time. And I will say, hey, UCF Arena, it's time to open up more than like 2 lines when you have 15 minutes before the game, because it's getting a little ridiculous. We get to the game, we get to our seats. My daughter typically gets popcorn and water, and she's happy. We start watching the first 5 minutes. And within the first 5 minutes, something akin to, Daddy, we're not winning this game, are we? Like, my daughter is 6. She is 6. And we were down something like 12-2 or 14-2 or something like that.
So this is akin to our text talk right now.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I can't get the exact thing. I'm not going to waste time on that. But my daughter recognized it. That first 6 minutes, they were sleepwalking. And this seems to be what has been happening in the second half the whole time, for at least the last 6 or 7 games. it was not good. It didn't look good. It was really, really good. It was really, really bad. I mean, it was bad. If you were watching the game, it was bad. In my back of my mind, I'm like, oh, great, here it comes again. And this feels like we're at UCF football when we're in these up and down seasons, kind of O'Leary times, mid O'Leary times. So at some point, about 14 minutes in, or maybe near the under 12, they get about 2 or 3 baskets. You can see their physical attitudes changing. You can see their posture changing. You can see their defense changing. And that was the key for this whole game. When they started to actually play together, they started to pass the ball, still had some ISO, but again, Hall had a lot of ISO and wasn't doing as well as he could have. When the offense started churning a little,
he was also getting doubled every
he was
time.
being doubled all the time, and he passed out of it pretty decently. But you're right, he was, and you can see that often. When he still got 9 or 10 when he was doubled almost every time he touched the ball. When the offense started churning a little bit, and they actually, I won't say tried on defense, but they had active hands. You can see like Darius Johnson almost to pick the pocket of their point guard a couple of times, and it was annoyed with himself when he got the ball out but couldn't get to it. Those are the things we've been missing. The deflections, having your hands out, being active, getting moving your feet quickly while monitoring where the ball is, putting a hand in the face guard, guarding a little bit. No one's breaking through it anymore. But those things happen for about, I'll call it 30 minutes of the game. And it was impressive. And Utah has 55 on Utah. I think he might be his main guy. That dude was shooting out the
not only that, but they had a huge size advantage on us. We had Chim, and that's about it. I mean,
well, that was interesting too. Like when Chim was out, if we had a plus minus for that game, it probably wasn't good. When he was in, and he wasn't in foul trouble, but he wasn't in a lot. It was interesting. Also of note, that was interesting that Mikey started. Debo didn't start, and Mikey didn't play the second half. And I feel like that could be a defensive thing. I don't know. But there was all kinds of different lineups they were kind of working through to figure out what worked. Like had a Benny at the 4, Chiam at the 5, that with I think Juice, DJ, and sometimes Nils and sometimes Hall, that actually worked well too in the second half. All I'll say is this: when the defense when they play defense like I know Johnny wants them to play defense, they can win most games. There are a few teams that they actually, and they haven't been for a month. It's been frustrating. So a couple of other things from the game. Before the game, I recorded a post, and I don't know if I did the reverse mojo. I don't know if I actually posted the second part of it. I think I did, but it was getting dark. My daughter was running away from me while walking to the car. I tried to do some reverse mojo, and I almost nailed the exact score. A, B, if we get that type of defense, we can score. We know we can score. If we get that type of defense the rest of the way, who knows? Well, I just need to see it consistently, and that's been the problem the whole time.
The problem has been the 3-point percentage and the defense, right? So I don't know if you remember this, but Johnny Dawkins, his goal for previous teams was 60 points.
Yep.
Hold them to 60 points, right?
Yeah.
And our offense was so anemic that sometimes that was a troublesome number to suppress, right? And win the game. This game was no better on the 3-point line. The defenses have shifted to cover our 3-point shooters. DJ has been off. He hasn't been comfortable. We haven't been getting a lot of set shots. So what that means is that instead of running, we ran pick and rolls early, and we're trying to do that in earlier games and all that kind of stuff. You don't see that. You see dribble handoffs, yes.
Yeah.
You see some weave.
Yes.
But you don't
They
see
dribble handoffs. That's
Yeah.
been a new one I think I've seen the last couple of games where it looks like it's a dribble handoff and they pull it back and they hand it off to the second person. They did that a lot, and that did confuse Utah a couple of times.
Yeah. So, but the difference has been defense. You've
Yeah.
got to have defense, especially if you're not shooting well from the 3-point line. Now, again, those are defensive adjustments by the opposing team. And then the other part is rebounds, right? So this game, UCF shot 25%. They've been hovering around in between 20 and 23% is what we've been talking about. They shot 25% from three. Utah shot 33.3. They got hot in the second half. And then, I mean, think about this. 6 of 24. That's a lot of missed shots. Utah's field goal percentage was 50.9% to UCF's 44.6.
Yeah.
Were we efficient offensively? Yes, but you don't win a lot of games when, I mean, if you're shooting 44.6 from the floor, you're gonna be in a lot of games and probably win them, right?
Well,
but 50.9 is ridiculous.
And but it was how much they shot. They were 5 of 6 to start, and we were like 4 of 17. At some point, we were something like 9 of 28, and they were like 6. They were like 10 of 12 or 13. Like we shot a lot more than them, which means
we have been. And in this game, we got 10 more shots than what they did, and it's why we won, even though we had a lower percentage.
Yeah.
It was a volume play. We have been doing that. And the thing that we've been talking about in our text talk in these hoops games is not only the defense, but also not being able to finish in transition. For some reason, we've been missing a lot there. And then a big difference in this game, too, that was a growth for Chiam is his ability to get points off of a rebound. He's getting an offensive rebound and then scoring those points. So those second chance opportunities and putting that ball back into the basket was huge in this game. Free throw percentage, 75%. They shot 80%. Rebounds, they out-rebounded us 32-29. Despite the length, that's actually not bad. They had 18 assists to our 12 assists. So again, that goes back to the ISO ball, right? And they were really doubling Hall and daring us to beat them with the other 4 players on the floor. So one thing I always talk about is assist to turnover ratio, right? That's the key to most games. So they had 18 assists, but they had 19 turnovers. Most of those came in the first half. UCF had 13 assists, or I'm sorry, 12 assists, but they had 16 fast break points, right? And 8 turnovers. And so the last game when we played Oklahoma State, we just could not hold on to the ball. So that was really the big difference in this game was the assist to turnover ratio, the rebounds, and the defense, because they held them to 72 points, which we've been in shootouts up to 100 recently. So they did not do well with our zone at all. When we played zone, it completely threw them off. And at the end of the day, we had to play well defensively to win this game, and we did fairly well. Now, there's still Juice is still a liability on defense.
Yeah.
Right? Big time. If you watch him, he gets lost really quickly on his defensive assignments. And Johnny Dawkins said that after the game is that you have to do that. We have to get them better on their defense. And I know it's frustrating him because that's been his culture for a really, really long time. He's got the offensive producers. He doesn't have the defensive players, but they did enough this game to win. And the energy was different. They didn't look defeated. And it's interesting. At the end of the game, BJ made a comment before DJ came over and talked to him. BJ said, the other commentator said to him, hey, did the senior leadership of this team come over and tell the team, hey, we're not losing, right, this game, right? Because that's what it felt like to him. And so BJ came back and said that should have happened weeks ago. Now, Ben I think it was last week or the week before, actually put a challenge out to the team. He said, I don't want to see that as a former alum, season ticket holder, and a former basketball player do better. And they did better this week. Now, we've got 5 guaranteed games left for the rest of the season. Utah's head coach was fired. So,
Yeah.
and so the dichotomy between UCF and Utah, right?
Yeah.
Utah's coach had 4 years, came from Utah State, went to the tournament 4 times in a row. We hired Johnny Dawkins. He's been here, what?
9 years?
9 years,
Yeah,
right?
something like that. Yeah.
So Utah fired him after 4 years. So UCF again, it kind of puts to me, it puts a spotlight on what are we doing, bro? Right. So, Alan, I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to say about this game or not.
About the Utah game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good to obviously see the 7-game losing streak end. That felt eerily similar to the football team's back-to-back 5-game losing streaks the last 2 years. Just that kind of once it really started going, you felt like you didn't know, when the end was, for the losing streak. And, that was something we haven't seen the basketball team do in quite some time. I was looking last year, the longest losing streak we had was 4 games in conference. So to go through a 7-game losing streak, especially again, it's a team like Colorado that hadn't won a single game before they beat us, and then Oklahoma State, who's obviously struggling. Games that we had penciled in as wins prior to the game was disappointing. So yeah, it was good to see them get back. I won't even say get back on track, but just get back in the win column, and maybe build a little bit of momentum going into the Big 12 tournament. Maybe they could steal a game. I don't think we have a lot of hope right now for that, but I think you nailed it on the head. It's the most glaring issues have obviously been the defense, which is the opposite of like Johnny's tenure and usually a staple for UCF basketball under Johnny Dawkins. And then the 3-point shooting. It's something I'll get to in my my stat of the day, but that it's been glaring how bad the 3-point shooting. I guess you could say live and die by the 3 ball, but they've been really dying by it lately. But it's good to see us win, and I don't know, maybe we could close out with a 5-game winning streak or 6-game winning streak to end the year. We'll see.
Yeah, and for us to have a chance at the tournament, we have to probably win at least one in the Big 12 tournament, win the rest of the way. And probably
to win out
to make it to get it at large. So
hey, maybe we'll win the whole Big 12 tournament.
Yeah, we'll
get that guaranteed bid.
I think you made a comment that said, hey, "Yeah, we're going to the Elite 8, but to the NIT." So I think unfortunately for this team, that rings more true than it should. So. All right, let's go ahead and pivot off of the Utes. Huh?
I said if we won the NIT, I feel like I was talking about this with a buddy today. That would be a really, really good accomplishment for UCF. Like if we happen to win the NIT, like I'd consider that a massively successful season.
I don't. Not the way we started.
That's the problem.
That's a free fall. Like expectations wise, I mean, you think about we beat Texas Tech. You know what I mean? We beat Texas A&M, both teams that are highly rated. We won. We did well. Everything was set up into this back half of the stretch. We were expecting that we were going to lose some of these games to these higher ranked teams, but even Kansas just lost. They're in a little bit of a free fall, right? But this team, after how it started,
yeah,
right. We're getting into how it ended. And it's not right now. ending well. So I do hope that they, listen, I want them to be successful. I want them to make the tournament. I want them to make a tournament run. I want Trey's prediction of an Elite Eight team to come true and it not be in the NIT. But I think your joke is probably a little bit more accurate. But that being said, let's talk a little bit and pivot about Johnny's future.
Pivot.
All right. So we've talked a lot about this, right? We've talked a lot about this. At this stage of the game, even Ben has kind of come over to the dark side. But I want to ask you a question. I want to ask you guys the question. There was a tweet that came out recently from one of the players that basically said, "Hey, Johnny Dawkins is a great coach. Don't give up on him yet, etc." He said in his presser he plans to coach for a long time, so not exactly retirement language. I wouldn't expect him to be that mode in the middle of the season, right? I'd hope that he would continue on so that he could push the team. But realistically speaking, I'm expecting Johnny Dawkins to retire. When we talked about the contract extension that he got, the comment I made at the time was this was a contract extension to get us to the point where we start earning full share revenue from the Big 12 so that we have a starting place to go get another coach. What do you guys think the future for Johnny Dawkins is at this point? If you were to say what you see today.
I didn't know that the expectation was him to retire, for him to retire. I don't know if that's like just your personal opinion or something
that's my expectation is that he will retire because he would get fired otherwise. And Johnny's too classy to do that too. I mean, no matter what, Johnny he's tried. He's a statesman as far as the NBA is concerned. He's a statesman in college basketball. He's represented UCF well. I don't think he deserves to be fired. So unless he pushes the issue, it'll be either Johnny walks away from UCF, mutually agree to whatever, separate or whatever. But if Johnny, I think I was kind of waiting to see what the language was in the presser. He's still pushing for, hey, I love coaching. I still like coaching. I want to continue to coach, blah, 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 that kind of language. And I expect that. But I get the vibe that he's going to want to continue to coach. The best situation for UCF would be for him to retire and leave him out on a high note. I don't think anybody wants to embarrass Johnny Dawkins. He's a good dude. He's been a good representative for UCF. As others have said in articles, he's done more with less. Yes. So I don't think anybody wants to see Johnny Dawkins fired. But I think that there will be either a mutual agreement. That's why the contract was set up that way. That's why his agent fought for a higher buyout at the end. And I think it was set up that way. And it was smart by Terry Mahajer to set it up in a way that gets us through to the full payment so that we can go out and pay a little bit more for a head coach. So that's where I think this is headed. At the end of the season, whether he retires, which is what I think he should do, or whether whether they mutually agree to part ways, I think ultimately that's where we'll land at the end of the season. But I wanted to get your guys' thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, he is 61, so it wouldn't be a total shocker if he retired. And I agree with you. He doesn't deserve to be fired in the sense of like, that's not how he should go out. Like you said, he's classy. We've always talked about how great of an ambassador is. We talked about how everyone, 100 out of 100 people always say they like Johnny the person. Everyone says that. So
myself included.
And all three, all of us on this show. And I've met him at the Charge On tour. Nicest guy. Sat at our table. Was awesome. We talked to him for like 15 minutes. Me and my buddies. Really nice guy. Yeah. So I think he deserves to go out in a way that does not embarrass him or anything like that. That being said, yeah, I agree that his future at UCF is, it's not going to extend past this year. Unfortunately, there's just after this losing streak and the collapse where just 3 weeks ago, we are at worst a bubble team that has a pretty good shot of making the tournament. If we even go like, a little bit above 500 over the rest of the season, where we're in a pretty good spot to completely collapsing and losing to teams like Colorado and Oklahoma State, 2 teams that we'd already beaten this year. Just there's no reasoning for that. So for that to happen, I think we've all said he has to go. It's unfortunate, but UCF needs a new direction. UCF needs a spark in their basketball program, not just this season in general. And they've needed one for a long time. It needs a shot in the arm, whatever you want to call it. But the excitement around the basketball team has been pretty bad for the last decade, outside of like the tournament appearance and then at spots during this Big 12 era, where last year we had all those unexpected wins. This year we had a really good start, but it's still ending the same way it always seems to end, which is NIT or worse. Outside of 1 year in the last 25 where we made the tournament and won one game in it, it's ending. We may have gotten there from a different path in each of these seasons, but it's time for something to change in basketball, and we need a spark that's going to get people excited. I mean, this is a team that's in the best conference in the country. We want to do something with that. And Roger, like we talked about a few weeks ago on the pod, you said like, we don't have to be perfect anymore like we did in the American in order to make the tournament. So the bar is fairly low. If we can even be a contender in the conference, a little bit, or even just somewhat consistently make the tournament, whether it's a 10 seed, 12 seed, whatever, that's going to be significantly better than the last 2 decades for the most part. So we need to get there, because every basketball season feels like it's on repeat and it ends almost the same. And it's getting
all we have to be is a top 8 team in the Big 12. We don't have to be the number 1 team.
Right.
All we have to do is be the 7th or 8th best team in the league.
And that to me feels unattainable under Johnny Dawkins right now. And he's 61. Things aren't going to change. So the future under him is going to be for about a few more weeks. And unfortunately, that's just how it is.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Okay, let's go ahead and pivot once again.
Pivot.
All right. So
this is why we're getting comments.
Yes. So the future of the pivot. Normally, our listeners are in the comments section pivoting with us. It's a little dry this week. I don't know what's going on. I see you guys out there. So hey, if you want to hear about something, you want us to talk about something, please let us know. But for this week's listener love, I'm going to read this comment that we had from Matt Present. Number 1, thank you, Matt, for listening. We do take all of the comments that you guys put out there seriously, and we appreciate when you do interact with us. He says, enough, in capital letters, with the pivot gimmick. It feels so forced and lame. No one on the show is into it other than the point man. I guess that's me. It's giving the HR department. It's giving the HR department trying to make the employee who couldn't care less about a mandatory quarterly meeting where everyone is just sitting there spacing out, and then the boss comes out and says, "Good morning." ... Sounds like my intros. Come on, we can do better with that good morning, with those good morning vibes. Okay, so Matt, we're going to pivot your comment into a new segment. So what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start putting a poll out there, different questions that we're going to do every week, once a week. And for this week, we're going to do the pivot poll. So the pivot poll is this. First, I'm going to ask you guys, since you're on the show tonight, but I'm going to put out onto Twitter, and I'm going to ask all of you to participate. Should we continue the pivot as we transition from one segment to another, or should we do something else to transition? I don't know what that would be. Maybe touchdown. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe it's Omaha. Who knows? But should we continue the pivot, or should we look for something else? So, Josh, I'm going to put you. You're not allowed to straddle the fence on this one. Yes or no on continuing the pivot. That way we have your vote in the mix.
Sure. I am fine continuing the pivot. I have no problem pivoting. Pivot is my jam. And if anyone has a problem, it's Alan.
All right. So that's a drinking game, I think. But Alan, you just got called out by Josh. What do you think about the pivot?
Look, first of all, I vehemently deny those allegations that I don't want this as part of it, because I'm a big, as you know, I'm a big tradition guy. That's why I love college football until the traditions keep getting ripped away little by little, and I hate it. But this is a tradition that we've had pretty much since day one of the show, if I recall correctly. And no, I don't want to remove any traditions. So you have my answer, Buckaroo.
All right. So there we go. There's the first 2 votes in our pivot poll. We will be putting that out on X, or Twitter, as I like to call it, for you guys to do that. You're also welcome to comment and give us your thoughts on the pivot and whether we should continue that as well. All right, let's go ahead and while we have it, pivot, to the baseball talk. Let's talk a little baseball this week. Rich Wallace, I actually sent him an email. He responded back congratulating him on the sweep for last week, and then this week.
Okay.
Last week,
yeah.
Yes. For this week, we almost and for the win against Mizzou, who is not playing as well this year. But hey, we won 7-1 versus Mizzou. The Bats seem to be coming alive. We played a Bryant team. Those of you that watched our most recent series that made the tournament last year, won their conference, won their bid from their conference as well. So this isn't like a terrible baseball program.
No.
But first game, and remember last year, we tied them and they called the game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So, and it was a double-digit game. So things that I saw out of this series, number one, our pitching staff, I don't know what's going on with Staggs. Like, Staggs is a phenomenal pitcher typically, but he's been getting knocked around a little bit by Bryant. He was our Friday night starter against Bryant for the second week in a row. He got kind of hit around the ballpark early. So I don't know what's going on with that. I'm hoping our pitching coaches can kind of rein that in. However, the rest of the staff, and especially the bullpen, has been phenomenal. We win the first game 7-6 against Bryant. The second game, we won 4-2. So obviously the pitching staff did really, really well. And then the third game, we lost 3-5. And what was interesting is we were getting guys across on base, but we were leaving them stranded. Our hitting was not coming through. We were kind of reverting back to what we saw earlier on in the season, where they were jumping on pitches and they were hitting into the defense, unfortunately. And, that's why we lost the game. We still won the series, which is good. Unfortunately, we are no longer undefeated. So the team is 7-1 or 6-1 at this point. So still great. Having won against Siena, which we expected to win, having beat Mizzou, and now the Bulldogs. Now, a little bit of concern. One thing I will say about that, hitting always, and you see it in softball as well, is always behind pitching to start the season. Now, we saw some great at-bats and plate appearances by our guys. Espinal has been phenomenal in his duties, pinch hitting. There's a lot to like. Sonny had his, Sonny B had some good at-bats as well. And the team seemed, especially in that second game or that first game, to figure it out. But it's been coming later on in the games, right? So when we started off in the first game, in the second it was 3-2, and then in the fourth they scored 1, we didn't. Fifth they scored 1, we scored 2. Sixth we didn't score. Seventh we didn't score. Eighth we didn't score. Ninth we scored 3. So we very well could have lost that game. Those are the types of games that give you confidence in late innings, right? Which was a good thing. But for those of you that are pulling the fire handle, like emergency escape handle, right? Because we lost to Bryant, I encourage you not to, but we do have some work to do on the hitting. And Coach Wally talked about it after the game. He talked about, how this team wasn't hitting and sitting on the pitches that he wanted. Bryant did a great job in the last game, really playing small ball. And defensively, we've been really, really good. But they got on base and they were able to move and manufacture runs. And we just never got it together there. Towards the end, we got the guys on base, but we kept hitting into the defense. So we could have very well won this game, especially when it was 3-4. We just didn't get it done. But overall, I think it's a good start. We'll be playing Florida Atlantic midweek, which means we're not going to get their best pitching staff at home. It's sponsored by Sonny's Barbecue. So hope if you guys enjoy Sonny's, there will be some Sonny's at the game. And actually, this past week, there's a famous social media guy that talks about hot dogs and assesses hot dogs. And he was at the game, and he mentioned how good our hot dog was because of the bun that we use. So make sure you're buying, as George O'Leary says, if you go to the game, it's a great night at the ballpark. And 2, make sure you buy a hot dog because apparently they're pretty darn good. Scored a 9.3 out of 10. Any thoughts regarding baseball, Josh?
Yeah, I am cautiously optimistic. We have some big games coming up soon, and I'll talk about at least some of those later, the things that Alan doesn't pay attention to. So
hold on, the segment is things that Alan, or sports that Alan does not watch. Let's get that right.
Tomato. The fact is that there's a lot to like. There's a lot of growing pains. I was saying pains, but some growing. You come from behind wins, loading up the bases in the 9th inning. Those type of things are good. And I'm not worried about losing to Bryant in the final game of the series. I would like to see pitching get out of the first and second a little better.
Everybody has, but Staggs. He's been the only one that's had trouble.
Yeah, well, I mean, we need a solid 3 at this point. So I feel like we're in a good groove, and let's see what happens. This week should be a good telling week to see kind of how far we're going.
We do have FAU at home.
Yeah.
And then we're playing at the Cows in West Central Florida. And we've got a 3-game series starting on Friday with them. The Cows have a decent baseball team this year. So it should be a good matchup, and we better win it because it's one of the few games that we play against the Cows these days. But my big concern is more the hitting more than anything else. We've got to be able to take advantage and not strand batters on base. That's a big part of that. And we've got, Dylan King has been playing really, really well for us. Castellano's been playing really good. Sauce has been great. Sosnowski. The one I'm worried about is Tyler Kozera. Now, Tyler Kozera, he's 6'3", 209, right? So he should be a pretty good hitter, but he's definitely been a hole in our lineup. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him going forward. But a lot of these guys, if you look at the roster, they're 6'2", 6'3", 6'7", 6'4", 6'1", 6'0". So we've definitely upgraded the size of the players that we're getting. And the Big 12 is a good baseball conference. So in order for us to compete, we're going to have to pump up the volume as far as the hitting is concerned. Alan, I don't know if this is a sport you do watch, do you have any thoughts on the baseball team this year?
I don't watch, but Coach Wallace, and how, he's a friend of the show, and he's, been kind enough to give us 2 interviews now, or maybe 3. So I feel like I need to start paying attention, because he's been like I said, a friend of the show. But yeah, I mean, I do follow at least the record, and see what's going on, see how competitive we are or not during a season. So obviously a 6-1 start, I'm not going to sit here and say I know a ton about baseball, but I do say that it has some similarities to the basketball team, where they always start out strong in non-conference play. Pretty much dating back to when I was in school, even Conference USA, I always remember us, playing the Siennas and the other kind of smaller schools in Florida. What's the one can't remember the green logo.
The Cows?
Is it? No, not like they would be, I guess, FCS if they had a football team, like or like even D2. What is it? Stetson. Yes, that's exactly what Johnny Jones' school. But yeah, so I recall us playing them a lot in non-conference in these schools. Like
now, Stetson
Ryan,
is a baseball school.
They are, but I feel like we usually win that series from what I recall. Maybe. Okay, so.
Generally, but there's been years where they have like DeGrom on their team, who they have some like really big pitchers that are in the Major League Baseball at this point. So they're a solid team, and that's basically what they are known for at this point.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, I guess I just always feel like we do start out pretty strong.
We do play them a midweek game. Well, not quite a midweek game, because it's a Tuesday on March 18th. So we do play Stetson right before.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like Josh said, probably more cautiously optimistic. I'd like to see the baseball team take the next step and get farther than they have ever. I know the Big 12 is a tough baseball conference, and we have looks like some ranked opponents, whether it's TCU, who's obviously usually a powerhouse in baseball, or Cincy's ranked right now. So there's some tough games coming up, but let's just hope the strong start isn't followed by a conference play where we're hovering above 500 or below 500.
Yeah, so I think the big thing right now. Remember last year we made a regional, and this team. The hitting seemed like it was stronger at the front end of the season on last year's team, but the pitching is much, much better on this year's team. And the defense is really, really good, where we had some missteps on defense, and we had some injuries. So we had to move people around. Sonny D was injured. We had to move around third base. Lex Bodeker had to move to first base. He's been playing really, really well at first base this year. So I think that this team, the pitching is going to get you in games. I just like to see the hitting catch up to the pitching a little bit faster. And Josh put something in the private chat. I'm not going to put the whole comment out here.
You can.
But okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to, but Josh says it's
Sure.
okay. We have a little bit of listener love to give out to Brennan Burke on YouTube and YouTube Shorts. Those glasses look dumb as my guy. So we got a little bit of fashionista advice from Brennan. So number one, we joke, but thank you, Brennan, for commenting and obviously for watching.
Listen, all I'll tell you is this. One, first person who's ever said anything negative about my glasses ever. And I have some people who will call me out on stuff. Two, I had a business meeting literally this week where someone who was at a conference pretty much cold called us, didn't interact with anything else, and said, "Hey, we saw you guys and we wanted to talk about this potential opportunity." And when I got on the hurricane, when I got into the meeting in Zoom or Teams or whatever it was, she said, you are definitely the person I remember. No one could forget those glasses. So these glasses might earn me maybe, Brennan, more than you're making a year. I don't know if I want to be that.
Whoa. No,
It's
we
a
don't
big
do that here,
contract.
Josh.
No, it's all good. I appreciate the comment. I don't agree. So anyway, but listen, it was a good post. Not the tweet, but the short. The shorts were good before the Utah game.
All right. So, Brennan, thank you for the comment. Thank you for the humor. Obviously, Josh didn't appreciate it, but that's okay. The rest of us did.
Keep watching. It's not right. It's not right, but keep watching.
All right. So I had a quick note here from Alan, and I wanted to give him the opportunity. He had mentioned the Cooper interview. So we had talked about that earlier on in the show, but Alan, your insights are always appreciated. What comments did you have about the Cooper interview?
Yeah, I mean, I just know that when this hire was announced, it was initially and maybe still met with a lot of skepticism, basically because Coach Cooper has not really coached at a Power 5 level other than, I guess, when he was at Nebraska as more of an analyst. So he's never really had a position role or obviously as big as offensive coordinator at a Power 4 level. Obviously, he's done that at schools like, Portland State, but that's not the same as UCF or the same as the Big 12. But the interview that he did just recently have, the one that you guys discussed, it kind of made me have a little bit more trust in him, and I kind of understood a little bit more into why Frost hired him. To me, obviously their relationship mattered, but it does seem like Coach Frost has a lot of confidence in him and has really coached him up, and and Coach Cooper even said, he's a fan of Coach Frost. And obviously he's been around him at multiple locations, Oregon, and obviously Nebraska. So I think learning under him and the chance to have, get a guy that's a up and comer potentially that, coached at smaller schools, but is now getting his first big opportunity. I'd rather get someone like that that's on the back nine of their career that maybe their best days are behind them. So I got a lot more confidence in Coach after hearing, kind of what Frost had to say about him, but also he had to say about Coach Frost. So
so basically you're saying if he's a fanboy, he's A-okay.
No, I just think that the relationship that they've had where Frost has basically brought him to every school he's been at and been able to coach him up, and he's been able to learn. I think it's kind of similar to Mackenzie. Like Mackenzie obviously is fairly inexperienced, but I basically what I'm saying is I trust Coach Frost as far as coaching other coaches. And I think if you can get a guy that's, maybe on the start of his hopefully successful career, it's a good time to have him. So while it might be a little bit risky, I think it's the right move ultimately.
Okay, fair enough. All right, I do want to mention a couple of things about softball before we talk about the other sports that Alan doesn't watch. So number one, we talked about the Pitt victory. We had the Sunshine State Throwdown is what it's called, which is at the UCF Sports Complex. And I just wanted to say this. We did lose the return game that we had tied Ohio State away, remember? Yeah. And we got a return game. We did lose 3-7, but still pretty good results for the home team. The team is 12-6. We've got some really good pitchers on this pitching staff. I'm a little concerned about the hitting. It started to come alive, then it kind of disappeared again. It came alive, disappeared again, came alive, and then we're like, okay, we're good, and now it disappeared again because we're going to be playing number 25 FAU. But softball should be very entertaining this year as well. Okay. Now that we've talked about baseball, let's go ahead. Alan, we're going to go back to you for your Alan's Oxymoronic stat of the week. Alan, take it away.
All right. So, obviously talk about the basketball team. They did just end their 7-game skid. But I wanted to go into why, I mentioned earlier that, why I felt that they've been losing. I found this stat to be pretty telling, but so, normally UCF isn't, historically, at least since I've been watching them, they're not always the best 3-point shooting team. And that's illustrated in an entire Coach Dawkins era. They've hit 10 or more 3-pointers. Just twice is the most that they've done that. Last season was in general, they're not hitting a lot of threes, but last season they only had 10 or more 3-pointers 2 times the entire season. This year, we've had 10 or more 3-pointers in 11 games. So you're talking about more than 5xing the amount that we did last year. However, during the losing streak, there was just one single game where they hit 10 or more 3-pointers, and that coincided with a 7-game losing streak. So I think that kind of paints a story of what kind of happened here, along with the defenses, where the shots stop falling for us, and ultimately that's kind of a big part of this downfall recently. And sorry, on another negative note, the 7-game losing streak was
negative note.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, it's not much positive about the basketball team right now.
They just won. Come on, that's positive.
Yeah, that's true. But it was the longest losing streak since the 2015-16 season under Coach Donnie Jones, where we matched it with a 7-game losing streak in conference. Some of those losses did include Houston twice, Memphis, and Cincy, all good basketball programs, but kind of illustrates that this is by far the longest losing streak under Johnny. I looked, the longest losing streak previous under him was 5 games. So this is by far the longest one in his tenure here, and the longest since the 15 season.
Yeah. So kind of reinforces what we said earlier about what we expect to see for the rest of the season. But I will say there is some positivity in Knight Nation. I will say Utah I saw some comments out there about Utah being a bad team. They're not a bad team. No. They're not the team that Utah expects, which is what I think the dichotomy is there. Utah expects to win. They were, and they're willing to spend to do that. I'm hoping that UCF does the same. All right, Josh, it is time for your sometimes funny fact of the week. Take it away.
So we're talking about some of our upcoming opponents, and Kansas State is our next opponent in basketball. We'll stay on the basketball theme. I have two. Well, how about this? We'll make it really easy. How many times has UCF beaten Kansas State in basketball?
Ooh.
How many times has they beaten Kansas State in basketball, you said?
Correct.
Did we do it last year? I don't feel like did we beat them last year? I don't feel like we did. So in the entire history, did you say how many times we played them or no?
I have not.
Okay. I'm going to go twice.
I'm going to say never.
Probably a good answer.
So let me add a +1 to our question. How many times have we beaten Kansas State in football?
Ooh,
never.
I don't think so either.
Never.
So Roger is correct on both. We have never beaten Kansas State in basketball or football in our history. We've played Kansas State 3 times in basketball. We have lost all. We've played Kansas State 2 times in football. Probably should have won the first one, but definitely lost. Was it the big? Yeah, that away game.
That was the tornado game. Since we have all these weather games, we've got the monsoon game.
The whole game, though, we were more competitive in that one than we were in our Big 12 opener.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And even as a amazing other fact, we have only beaten one, we'll say one of Kansas and Kansas State. It was that basketball win that I sold my tickets that Roger talked about earlier. That's the only time we've beat either.
I'm just saying there's a correlation there.
Yeah, well, yeah. And
Utah is the outlier.
Yeah. Oh, should have beaten Utah in football this year. Actually, and I was going to say this on the other side, but I wanted to go more UCF centric. And I'm hoping, knock on wood, maybe we knock out one of those wins against them now. Kansas State has only had 4 losing seasons in basketball in the last 20 years. And they had a streak of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons getting out of the first round of the NCAA tournament a little while ago. They've had a couple of years of iffiness since COVID, but they've been doing pretty decent over the last
they
20.
are 13-14 and have had 3 straight
know.
L's in a row. So
I know.
BYU, Utah, and Arizona State. So I'm hoping we can add to that.
Me too. Also of note, don't always believe what you read when you look up online. I asked what is the record of Kansas State versus UCF after I looked at it. This is what Google said. 206-96. Kansas State leads the all-time men's basketball series against UCF with a record of 206-96. I did the search, and that was actually the Sunflower Showdown versus Kansas. So don't always believe what you read online.
Wow. So they beat they lead the series against Kansas 206.
I don't even know if that's true. But it's on that's what I could probably check Winspedia on that. That's and that's why I said don't believe what you read. No, that doesn't.
What did you
Alan? Yeah, Alan, will you look that up? 206-96, Kansas State versus Kansas. And in the meantime, let's go ahead and pivot one more time.
Pivot.
Alan just
pivot. Sorry.
There it is. All right. Quick update on other UCF sports. He's in favor of the pivot, but does not participate. Okay. Quick update on other UCF sports that Alan does not watch.
All right, let's talk about women's basketball. We're no longer in the basement, baby. I feel like Dick Vitale. We pulled off another win, a barn burner versus Texas Tech, winning 61-60. So I think we are now like 13th or 14th. We're not 16th, which actually makes a difference.
We won the last 2 games, right?
Yeah. Well, not the last 2. We lost to Kansas 63-50 in a closer game than probably some would think. We have 2 games left. Home versus Iowa State on Tuesday, February 25th at 7 p.m., which is senior night. So that if you're listening to this probably might have already happened. If you're live, it's tomorrow. Go out to UCF and versus Houston at Houston on March 2nd on Sunday at 3 p.m. The Big 12 championship is at March 5th through the 10th. And we are definitely going to be playing on March 5th based off of who the buys that we are not going to get. So that could be our last game of the season. Maybe they get 1 or 2 more games. We'll see what happens.
And
but so far,
one thing to point out with all of that, we did get a bunch of players back.
Yeah.
So except for one that was supposed to be a phenom who is no longer with the team. We don't know why. I'm guessing the reason we don't know why is because of a bad reason. But that again, that's a guess. That's not even an allegedly. That's a guess. And reading the team leaves. But we did get several of our players back. Some of them that were out for multiple months that have come back, and I think you're seeing the results of that.
Yeah, competitive games. It's nice. Maybe it's not coach's fault completely. Anyway, let's get back into baseball. We did I'll pass baseball. We talked about we're playing the Cows in a series in Tampa on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We're playing FAU midweek on the 25th at 6 p.m. We talked enough about that. We'll move on to our ranked team. So our number 20 women's tennis team, they lost to FAU in Boca, but they beat Penn 6-1. We get in the conference next week, and this is when the ranked or highly ranked teams, like top 25 and highly ranked teams, start. So we have Kansas State in Manhattan. We have this little twofer in the Midwest. We have Kansas State in Manhattan on Friday, February 28th at 5 p.m. and number 16 Oklahoma State in Stillwater. That's on Sunday, March 2nd at 2 p.m. Number 11, men's tennis. I wasn't on the show last week, and I see you guys talked about how we did. We had that great win versus it was at Ohio State, and then just got blanked the next 2 games
by Stanford.
Stanford, and I forgot who else it was. Another, like 2 top 10 ranked teams. So it happens. We got back to our winning ways. We beat UAB 4-0 and number 71 Stetson. See, they're pretty good in tennis too, Alan. 6-1. Well, we're on a break until 3-7.
Is men's tennis ranked?
They are number 11. They might go down after that.
I thought so. You didn't mention it. I was like, I know we were highly ranked.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, I said number 11 men's tennis. I started their winning.
Oh, I didn't hear that part. Sorry.
It's in the copy. Maybe it didn't weave in, but yes, we are ranked and doing well. It's a tennis. Thank you for USTA for building in Lake Nona, because we're obviously getting not only the coaches but the players who want to play where the USTA is.
And we did lobby for that, by the way.
We did what?
We lobbied for that USTA center.
Yeah, 100%. And Lake Nona is wonderful. And I've been to Eagle Creek a couple of times because we do some golf tournaments out there. Lake Nona is wonderful and has way too much traffic. But anyone who lives out that way already knows that.
Oh my gosh, the 417 getting off of there and turning left. Forget about it.
It's just straight. If you go there's I forgot the name of the road. The one that goes right past Eagle Creek, both the elementary and the golf course and all that. Yep. Just I'm going there for lunch and it's packed. Softball is 12-6-1 with 5 of 6 wins in the Space U Classic this week. We had a no-hitter versus Quinnipiac 3-0, and it was interesting. I didn't see a walk in the stat sheet, but maybe I didn't look at the full box. So but it was a no-hitter nonetheless. We also had wins versus Pitt 4-2, versus Florida Gulf Coast University 2-1 and 4-2, and we hit Columbia out of the park 8-0 in 5 innings. Only loss, as you talked about earlier, was to Ohio State, which we were tied against in the other coast. We lost, unfortunately, 3-7. So we have, as you well know, softball plays a lot of games, like 50, 60 or so a season. We are going to the team is facing number 25 FAU in Boca. We talked about this earlier on Wednesday, the 26th at 5 p.m. That'll be a good test. And then we have 5 more games at the Plex for the Charge On Classic. We got to do Charge On Space U. We got all the classics. We're going to be playing on Friday, February 28th, George Mason at 2 and Providence at 7 p.m. And oddly enough, we have 2 on Saturday. That's not the odd part. We're playing Providence back-to-back games, again at 4:30 p.m. the next day. So that'll be interesting. And we're playing North Florida at 7 p.m. The last one on Sunday on March 2nd is at 12 p.m. versus Georgia Southern. And last but certainly not least, the women's track team, track and field is going to be happening. The Big 12 championships are in Lubbock this week. Hopefully we win some races.
All right, so that is the Josh Lazar team, is the track and field team. All right, final thoughts this week. For me, basketball was the big conversation this week. I do think that it's great that we won, but I'll reissue the edict or the challenge that Ben Stout did. Show us, you sent that tweet out this week that you're all on board and that you want to protect Johnny Dawkins. I think Johnny Dawkins, unfortunately, is a foregone conclusion either way. But I show us. You said you care about Knight Nation. You're sorry. Show what you did in the waning minutes against Utah. Show that defense. Show that effort that we've been looking for. And let's go get some dubs. Outside of that, congratulations to the baseball team and Rich Wallace, and keep going. Football, I want to caution and say, hey, I think we all realize this is a rebuilding year, but let's keep that in mind during football season, please. And, other than that, thank you all for watching. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for liking. Thank you for sharing it with your friends. So please continue to share it with your friends. We appreciate everything you do. Go Knights, and
Charge
on. There we
Charge
go.
on, baby.
That was pretty good. It was close. With enthusiasm. It was wonderful. Pivot.